So today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Geoff Everett. Now, Geoff is somebody I've known for a number of years, and you'll tell from the interview, he's always been the sort of guy that you look to sort of, see where you were on the guitar playing ability level. Geoff talks about a number of people that he's worked with, but not all of them. I mean, he's worked with lots and lots of people. And it was great to sort of catch up with him. So details are on the show notes, as always, and also check out the stuff for Blues Camp and the Icaro Music Charity. So, yes, without further ado, let's get on with the show. So today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Geoff Everett. Hi, Geoff. Good to see you.
Hello, Vic. Nice to see you too. Our paths don't often cross.
No, that's right. And weirdly, we've been both growing our hair.
We're very hirsute.
Exactly. And as we can.
Yes, well, absolutely. And we're jolly lucky to be able to.
Exactly.
And we're making full use of that ability, I think.
Totally. Yes. So I'm sort of impersonating the Dulux dog at the moment. So my traditional first question is, what do you do?
Yes, I was waiting for that because I've heard some of your interviews. And well, the thing is, what do I do? Mainly, I suppose, I'm a musician. By the way, I hate talking about myself, but there it is. We've got to be done. A musician. I write songs, and I record them. That's the sort of basis of what I am, I suppose, really, But, well, this is where I've got to at this point in life anyway. Whether I'll be a hero of something else in the future in the few years I've got left, I don't know.
Yeah.
I may take up, I don't know, skydiving.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I've been thinking about that myself. No, I haven't. So let's go back right to the beginning. When did you sort of realise that you were interested in music?
Well, it was a long, long time ago. My grandmother used to live in this great big house, this huge house near Mepham, actually, which I know you're familiar with.
Yes.
But it was like Miss Havisham's house. It's a long story, but we used to visit and with my parents when I was very young. And I knew that she had two old mouldy pianos in one of the, because there was 20 rooms in this house. And I wanted to get away from the chit chat, and in the living room. So I used to say, Gran, could I go and play the piano? And she said, yes, yeah, that's fine. And I would walk from that room and down this corridor, and I could hear the voices fading in the distance. And it was so quiet in there. And there were these paintings, these portraits, because I come from quite an illustrious family, actually, but they were rich. I'm not, I must say that. And I was quite scared of these great big paintings. And I used to stare at one particular one, which was quite frightening, an old guy with a big beard. And I would let it go really quiet, and then I would bang on the keyboard. So just to frighten myself.
Right.
And I sort of progressed from there. And I found that if you press one white note and then you left another white note next to it, it sounded rather good.
Yeah.
Like a third. And that was odd. And as I went up, I found that they weren't all equal. A C and then a D, and then the E. And then I found that you need to use a black note. Otherwise, I didn't know it then, but it would be like a minor interval. And so that's one of my earliest memories, really, about being interested in music. another one really is my brother. He's a lot older than I, and he came back with these 78s of Buddy Holly.
You said he came back. Was he in the Merchant Navy?
No, he wasn't. No, but he used to sort of travel about here.
Right.
I don't know where he got these from, but he put them on, and I was just knocked out. I was just knocked out. There were two. There were Peggy Sue, and there was also Not Fade Away, and it was the solos. It was the solos that did it for me. You know, you obviously know that clanging Peggy Sue solo, which is all chordal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And all downstrokes, of course. Yeah. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked with it. For what is this? What is this? I want this. This is what I want to do. You know, and so, and same with the other record as well. And there's a strange story about that, because when the solo from Peggy Sue was playing, it was odd. I had this picture in my mind of this sort of temple-esque building. It was really, really odd. And I thought, why am I thinking? And then forever after that, when I listened to this, I could see this in my mind. And it was years later, I read a biography of Buddy Holly, and I opened the page, and there was a photograph of this building, and it was Buddy's school.
Wow.
It was the school.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I thought, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
There's something coming through the airwaves or whatever that affects not everybody, but a lot of people who perhaps with an artistic bent or a musical bent. And I'm wondering if that was in Buddy's brain when he was playing that, and out it went, and I sort of picked that up. I don't know. I don't claim to have any special talents in that way, but so I think that was like one of my earliest things with music, you know, to want to be involved in that, you know.
Yeah, that's a brilliant story. Well, you know, because I totally get that. I'm really interested in how visceral your relationship to music was, even early on. You know, you're like, you play a chord to frighten yourself, you know, really loud type of thing. And you know, and because in actual fact, for me, the more I've gone sort of back to looking at music from a point of view of it not being about the theory, because okay, you know, we get to a point where you get to sort of theory overload, you know, but you always realize there's even more, because somebody's doing something that you can't work out what it is that they're doing. But then you get to a point of thinking, well, actually, that's not what was going on in, you know, in the mind of so and so, you know, whoever it is, because like, you know, Django Reinhardt was illiterate, so I mean, there's no way the guy who sat down and read a book about theory.
No.
And obviously all the rock and roll players and the blues players and everything, you know, all that must have come from that sort of visceral thing.
Absolutely so.
And again, that link with, and we're going to obviously come into the thing about blues and sort of rock and roll. I mean, those early bluesmen, they were hot on that sort of stuff about what the music could do.
Yeah.
You know, how it could change people's minds and gave them power and all this sort of stuff. But, that has been a fascination for me for quite some time now.
Well, absolutely. One wonders why those early guys, I mean, why did they pick up a guitar? Just like the sound of it, or, I mean, it was so, you know, it was so common for guys in those days to pick up a guitar. And, you know, it is odd. Yeah. It is, as you say, it is very, very strange. Another quick story while I think about it, talking about early days. There was, before I could play guitar, there was a guy that showed up outside in a milk or bread van.
Yeah, like a milk float or whatever,
Yeah, and this is back in the day, and my parents were out, and my sister, who was 9 years older than me, she was told, you mustn't have anybody in while we're out. No one was coming. You know, my brother was there, I was there, but she was a bit, you know, not flighty, but she was very rebellious. And it wasn't long, a few minutes after they'd gone, she brought this bloke in. She said, there's some lovely bloke outside. She said, my brother played guitar and it was leaning up against the wall, the guitar. She said, lovely bloke out there. He's driving he's not driving, but he's helping out with the Co-op van. And this guy came in, his name's Keith. And yeah, saw my guitar, pulled it off the wall, and this guy, I'd never heard anything like it before. I'd not heard anything like it. I guess he was playing. This is before the Stones.
Yeah.
And I guess he was playing sort of like blues and R&B stuff, which he must have got from Chuck Berry and people like that. And I said to my sister, Mum said you're not to have anybody in. And she said, oh, well, she won't know. She won't find it. It's fine, don't worry. And, this guy was so good that I could not stop laughing. I was laughing. It was an odd feeling. It wasn't. I wasn't laughing at him, or I wasn't laughing with him.
No, I get what you. Yeah, get what you're saying.
But it was so. It was just so wonderful. I mean, my brother was quite good, and I didn't play at all. But to hear someone actually play this thing, and it was just wonderful. And he finished up with the shave and haircut thing, which was quite amusing. And he sort of vanished. It turns out that he was helping out because he was from the Dartford area, as you know, and his mum worked for the Co-op. We said, what happened to that Keith? What happened to, turned on the telly a little while after. There he was. There was Keith, lovely bloke, but and I thought, God, this is madness. And I still got that guitar that he played on. Wow. I got it in the wardrobe. All it was, it was just an old. It was a nylon strung guitar, but about strung with steel strings. I obviously can't remember. That's the trouble with this long hair. Look, it's getting everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
My mouth. Sorry about this.
It's the same thing for me, mate.
And where's the Brill cream?
Totally.
So that inspired me enormously, to see this guy. Had he not been one of the Stones later on, it wouldn't have made any difference. Yeah. This guy was just, there was something special about him, Vic. There was something special about that guy.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because the thing that got me hooked on guitar was a similar thing, but it wasn't Keith Richards, I can assure you. Although I was in Dartford, so that's my claim to be home. But of course, everywhere you went in Dartford, as a young musician, any pub, it was like, oh, there's Stones playing in the corner over there, and it wouldn't be enough room to throw anything around, let alone a cat. But so it was there everywhere, in Dartford. But what happened was I was at school and this lad came, and he was sort of like half Indian. His name was Shane. And he had this very unusual guitar, and he looked like Hendrix, but he didn't have, but he had straighter hair, but he had that sort of mystique about him. And he just sat there and sort of played some songs, and he was really only strumming a few chords, but he had the sort of the touch of being able to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is obviously what you experienced. And it was mesmerizing.
Yeah.
It was mesmerizing. And the thing was, it wasn't that he was doing anything particularly brilliant.
No.
But it was something about that connection with the instrument. And obviously that's what you experienced. But I mean, that your story is on another level.
Well, I'm quite proud of that. I've dined out on it, a few times.
And so you should. And so you should.
But, it's it is strange. I mean, do you think that guys like me and yourself, do we take for granted what we do? I mean, do we? People have said, obviously, to you and to me, "Wow, how'd you do that?" God, and he said, "Well, that was nothing really. That was just like I don't know, just a sequence that I just." And the other thing is, people have said, and they've said it to you, I'm sure. play that again. Well, no, because I've just made it. What do you mean you just made it up?
Yeah.
How could you possibly do it? You can like instantly compose something,
Yes,
like a solo or something like that. And they don't get it, of course, because they've not done that. But I think we perhaps tend to downplay what we do a bit, or do we? Or do we attach too much importance to it? I don't know. I don't know if you remember a guy called Lee Abbott. I was at school with him. He was in he played with Albert Lee, and he was in Magna Carta.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
Lovely bloke. He passed away a few years ago. But he said to me once, Geoff, he said, all we talk about is music. He said, we just talk about music. He said, I think we've got it out of proportion. He said, I don't think it's as important as we think it is. And I said, well, I think it is, Lee, I said, because that's what we do. He came up to me in the playground because I had this idea of starting a band. I knew 3 chords. So I thought, that's great. That's all I need, just those 3 chords. And I wanted to start a band. And I knew that he wanted to play bass. And bass players were like hen's teeth then.
Yes.
There weren't any. In fact, there was very few guitarists about, or drummers. And I sort of said to him, yeah, let's do this thing, And he said, yes, okay, yeah. And then I sort of forgot about it. And it all sort of put on the back burner. And then he came up to me because we used to get out of games and PE. We never did that. We weren't the athletic type, we were. So he came up to me while we were sort of watching the other people sort of bashing themselves out on the playground in PE. He said, and he cornered me. He said, when we having our first practice, that's what it was called then, practice, not rehearsal. When we having our first practice then, and I was sort of shamed into it. I was sort of shamed. I thought, oh my God, I've given you all this big one about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And now I've let it go. And because of that, I said, Saturday? Is Saturday all right? He said, yeah, all right, I'll be out at your place Saturday. So that sort of got me sort of kicked off then. And then Lee came into my life again, years later. I was working for the council, not working in a band at all. And I was in Gravesend. And I was walking the end of Windmill Street, and I literally bumped into him. And our paths have crossed before a few times since school, and various blues bands and things. And he said, oh, Geoff, are you working in a band? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm working for the council. He said, that's outrageous. He said, no, I can't have that. The next week, I was at work, the phone rang, picked it up. Oh, it's Lee. Oh, hello, Lee. He said, do you want to join a band? He said, they're going to Norway next month. I said, I don't know. I said, that might be a bit sudden for me. And he said, just phone this number. He said, so I did. And it was a guy called Roger Churchard, and he was like a very well-known fiddle player. He was in a band called Orange Blossom Sound, I think it was. And I said, hello, Roger. Here you got a band. He said, yes, it's country band, and my heart sank because that wasn't my favorite music at the time, because I didn't know all the various sorts of country music that there's been. I mean, there's been some great country stuff, really great. And I thought, oh God, well, what am I going to do? Sitting here for the rest of my life doing timesheets, or should I just go and see this guy? So I did. We had some rehearsals, and off to Norway we went, and I think we went for, I think it was 3 months, I think, in Oslo. I can't remember now. And that sort of got me started in the sort of pro type of, well, I mean, I must say that within a week I sat on my bed in the hotel and I thought, what am I doing? I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't do this, but I overcame that and just went from band to band to band, Like,
so when was this? How old were you roughly?
I would have been 20, 21. Up until that time, I'd done quite a lot with bands, really.
Yeah.
But
so what was your first band?
I had a little band called, not the Mosquitoes, the Reminiscence, based on Buddy Holly stuff.
Yeah.
And we did like little parties and youth clubs and stuff like that. And the very, very first gig I remember was for a little girl's birthday party, and I suppose I would have been 12 or 13, something like that. And we were hired by the dad to play, I can't remember, in Northfleet somewhere. And there was a little curtain there, and it went back, and all these kids, I felt like I was in the Beatles. You know, they were cheering. I thought, yes, this is what I want to do. This is what I mean. It sounds very egotistical, doesn't it? I mean, you know, it's just to think, oh God, how important am I? You know.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's things like that that are really, you know, because like we were saying, you know, that your early experiences about that sort of the feeling element of stuff,
yes.
You know, those type of events are really important because it gives musicians need credibility. You know, they need that feeling of people saying, I like that.
Yeah.
Because it makes you feel, you know, it gives you some sort of feeling that you've achieved something. And that is really important at certain points in time, you know. So we tend to have that sort of idea about.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it sort of makes you perhaps feel worthy or relevant or.
Yes, it does. Because I think the thing is, you know, the way that if you think about how the education system works is more or less this sort of thing that it sort of flatlines everything to some extent, doesn't it? Like, well, you know, that was all right, but really, you know, you need to work really hard to be able to do that, you know, and it's that type of thing all the time.
I've total lack of encouragement.
Yes, and also, and I've sort of written about this quite a lot. To be an artist, you've got to have a sort of a naivety and unrealistic expectation of what you can achieve. Because if you really knew what it would take, you wouldn't even start.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. If someone had given you a sheet of paper when you started and it said, look, Vic, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to go all through this. And, oh, God, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're going to have to blah, blah, blah. You'd say, I think I'll give that a miss.
Yeah, you know, and how many bands there are and what chances of success you're likely to have and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You know, you need to sort of look at it and go, well, you know, as you would as a teenager, you go, yeah, but most of them are rubbish. Which is the sort of thing I used to think.
Yeah.
They're not me. You know, you get this sort of, and then as you go on, you realise actually that's an important aspect because otherwise you would never get started. And then you start to appreciate other people's playing. And then you start to think, I really like that. I can't do that. That's really cool. I can do this.
Yes.
And this guy can do that. What the hell does he do? You know?
Yeah. How did you do? I mean, the first time I heard, Albert Lee, I actually did
this. Yes, Albert Lee.
Yeah. Just, you know, to set the benchmark. He, funnily enough, now this is another apocryphal story of mine. I was working with this guy, Roger Churchard, I told you about, at Dorking Halls. And Albert, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was. And he was working with a band called Country Fever, I think.
Oh, right.
And he came up to me and he said, naively, I was using like a fuzz box in a country band, you know, and it was like, it was odd. It was very odd. And I must say, I wasn't very good. I wasn't very good at that stage. And he came up and he's very, very nice. And he said, what's that pedal you're using down there then? And it wasn't a fuzz box. It was sort of like a compressor type. I think it was one of those old, they go for thousands of pounds out of these things.
Yeah, probably.
It was just a lump of metal with something written on it, Sonar sound or something. And he said, that's an interesting sound. I said, oh, yeah, it's just a blah, blah, blah. And someone said to me, that was Albert Lee. I said, oh, right, yeah. I didn't know. Shortly after that, a friend of mine played me a solo on a record, on a sampler album. And it was Heads, Hands and Feet.
Yeah.
Song for Susie.
Yeah.
Which was mixed awfully, actually, that song. But nevertheless, there was Chaz Hodges. And,
Chaz, yeah.
And he played me this. As up to then, I thought, guitar is guitar, you know, blues, pentatonic, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. He played me this solo, and once again, I was,
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, back to the drawing board. It was so articulate, though. It was so, I don't know if you're familiar with that solo, that particular solo, so articulate. Every note landed in the right place at the right time, and it drew pictures, pretty much the same as the Buddy Holly thing did that I spoke about. And it was grammatical. There was there were verbs in there. There was nouns in apposition. He would play something. There would be a comma. He would explain what he meant. There'd be another comma and go on. And all this thing was grammatical. I was just totally. So I said, lend me that. And he said, well, I don't like lend. I said, please lend me that LP. And I'm not sure if I ever gave it back. Anyway.
That's why I didn't want to lend it to you.
Yes, exactly. Well, years later, I did this album. I don't know if you've seen it, The Quick and the Dead. And I got Albert to play. I had the opportunity to get Albert to play on that. And in the studio, he plays some frightening stuff, country. I didn't want that. I wanted the Song for Susie type of thing. I said, could you play it like that, Albert? And he said, well, that's what I do, isn't it? And I said, yes, I guess it is. If you could sort of keep that sort of feel about it. And he did. And he did a few takes on it. And it's a long solo. And I said, I want all of it. And the engineer said, well, can't we, it's a bit long. It's going to make this track 10 minutes or something. I said, I don't care. I said, I want all of Albert on there. Yeah. And it's lovely, it's a lovely solo he did for me. And I'm so, when I listened to the takes afterwards, it was after the sax solo, a guy called Gerry Barnacle, which
Gerry.
The sax, it's terrific. And then Albert sort of slides in with his sort of understated phrases, building and building. And I felt quite tearful.
Yeah, I bet you did.
My God, he is doing this for me, and I thought, this can't be happening.
No, it is bizarre, isn't it, really, when you look at that?
Well, it is, it is for good. And going back to the feelings of music, well, there was that, wasn't there? There was the Buddy Holly thing and whatever. I mean, I had to travel. Times were different, before the war. But when I was 5, I used to have to travel a long way on the bus on my own. You wouldn't let children do that now. And I hated primary school. Hated it. And all I had in my mind was there was a Grieg thing which was used on a series called The Railway Children. I don't know if you remember that. It was not the film, but it was on the television. Right. And it was an oboe, and it was so sad. And when I got to school, I had to, for some extraordinary reason, keep thinking of this solo to make myself cry. Bonkers, totally bonkers. Why did I want to cry? I don't know. I just was so unhappy. I felt that by crying, it was a sort of a relief for me, I think.
Well, you were right, actually, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
This is one of the things about the intelligence that children have.
Yeah.
They're often absolutely on the money,
Oh, absolutely. Totally. I couldn't agree. They know more. You see, I mean, when we were young, when I was young, we weren't allowed to have emotions.
No.
We weren't allowed to have points of view, opinions or anything. No. You couldn't say, I feel really sad about that. It'd be, oh, don't be stupid. Come on. Or I feel angry about that. You're a child. You're not allowed to be angry, And I think also, you may identify too with this, that when we learned to play the guitar, it was almost like using that as a medium for the emotions that we weren't allowed to have when we were younger. I mean, my dad was a strange one. I was terrified of him, absolutely terrified of him, but he wasn't a bad man. But I do thank him for lots of things, because he would do some strange. He would get like a piece of cloth and he would pull it tight, so it went wop, 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 wop. And he would ask me to spell that. He would ask me to spell what that sound is, and then he used to set me these impossible questions, like, he said, if I had a clock and I wound it up and it was fully wound and I buried it in the garden and it went rusty and it all went, but where's the energy gone that was in that spring? And I would think, and I didn't mind doing things like that. It was fine, those real abstract, strange ways of looking at things.
Yeah, well, that's actually quite interesting, because generally that type of thing was people never sort of
No, they didn't. He was. I feel, I feel that it was a double-edged sword. Really, I feel unlucky that he was my father, but I feel lucky too. Of in the same breath almost. I was terrified of him, and yet I admired him, for lots of things, and I can look back now and think, well, I didn't like him, but he didn't like me particularly, but I can see so many similarities between him and me, and I can understand now his frustrations with things, and I find myself thinking the same things. I mean, he did think that he did play a bit of mouth organ, but it had to be a melody for him. It was just like a melody, no emotions, because he was pretty emotional. I don't think he was emotionless. I think he wouldn't show. He was terrified of showing it.
Yes. Well, I think that was quite something of that time.
It was absolutely.
My father was like that.
Was he? Yeah. Definitely. And he couldn't. Did your dad discourage you from becoming a musician?
Well, actually, it's quite interesting. He hated the idea of people having long hair.
Yes.
Okay, and but he was actually quite a good self-taught musician.
Was he?
He could play really good pub piano, if you see what I mean, right? And he could play sort of like chromatic harmonica.
Yeah.
Very similar in that sort of way.
Yeah.
But he hated the idea about me playing the guitar because it was almost like, what was that going to lead to type of thing.
Yeah. Get yourself a trade. Yeah.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was that was how I got into music, because he had a good ear.
Yeah.
And I could pick a tune up on a piano, interestingly, like you were saying. But it never went any further than that until I sort of discovered the guitar, really. And yeah, that was interesting. So, I look at that and thinking that sort of tenacity, because he was a very tenacious man, my father.
Yeah.
That is me as well. It's like, if I think something, that's, it's tempered a lot now from like what I was before. But otherwise, you would just give up, wouldn't you? That was the point.
Well, you would. But talking of that, I mean, you're an extreme. Well, I can see of you, you're an extremely organised person. I admire that. I admire that in you, because with your lessons and things, and you've treated this whole thing as a business.
Yeah.
And I've not found it within myself to rise to that particular standard of that. I mean, I can run a band, and I do run a band, and I have some really good players working with me and stuff, and I do albums, and all that requires some element of organisation and thought. But I think I sort of lack that, because I used to do, I don't know if you know, I used to teach as well. I used to teach guitar and things, and I just found it quite soul destroying, actually, because
it can be.
Yes, well, I can understand that, and and in the same way, my son Christian, he teaches,
I know,
and he's very organised too. But when I taught, I had a Wombles bag with lots of bits of paper in it, and that's as far as it went, really. And I would turn up, but I found a lot of the pupils were children that didn't really want to do it. It was just I was a babysitter, more or less,
Yeah, well, I think really, because obviously you've probably picked up from listening to some of the podcasts, there's a sort of a psychological element to how I see things. And I think sometimes, if you look at that and think, well, people can get a lot out of playing a musical instrument that's not necessarily musical. And I've realised, actually, and I thought this before, but it's been sort of proven to me that sometimes my music lessons were a bit of a lifeline to kids, because you don't know what goes on. You can pick up a sort of a vibe that something's not right. And it's not until years later that somebody says to you, when you used to turn up, you actually gave me some purpose. Yeah, literally as strong as that.
Really?
Yeah. Somebody whose mother had remarried, and the person that she'd married was nasty.
Mm.
And I was aware of that because this guy used to make remarks to me. And because me being me, I used to just turn it around on him, you know.
Yeah.
But this lad said, you know, the guitar became the thing for him that kept him together. And I think, well, that's the point about music. You know, for some people, you just don't know. That little thing might be something important. And it could be it might appear to be quite trivial to us, you know.
Yeah. But still important, but important for the reasons, as you say, that we don't know, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. A bit like, you know, Keith turning up and instead of delivering the milk, he just sort of sat and played your brother's guitar. He might not have realised the impact of that, but it was, you know.
I mean, I bet he didn't. Yeah, I'm sure.
No, he wouldn't have done.
No, exactly. But as you say, but the impact that he made on me was enormous.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. When I preferred to teach the electric guitar later on. I mean, I say teach, it was sort of a very low key thing, really. I used to turn up and charge people and stuff like that, but there was no broadsheets and records kept or anything like that. But I found that I taught in a way that was pretty similar to the way my music career has gone, and that's in a non-linear fashion. You know, I listened to your previous guests, and they did this, therefore they did that, which led to this, which went on to that, blah, blah. Mine seems to be like ungainly blobs of, you know, this, that, nothing really led to anything else, but this happened, and then not because of that, something else happened, and this happened, and I used to teach like that. I used to teach, and I found it worked for me and my pupils that you teach them a bit of something, and they go, oh, I like that, yeah, but why is that? And I said, well, that'll become apparent later.
Yes.
And I would introduce something, and they go, got it, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, and you must get this all the time, that rewarding feeling when you see that face light up and the recognition. Oh, that's why Hendrix played like in that particular way, because he used to use those sort of scale chord things, you know, the tonic and the sub on you'll know this, and parts of it. And I, you know, obviously Hendrix used to use that in a lighter way when he was in those sort of soul bands.
Yes,
But no, it is all very odd. And then sometimes I sit and I think, Geoff, what are you doing exactly? Why are you? This is why I was sort of dreading your first question, because I know he's going to say, "What do you do?" And what do I do? You know. Or should I say, what am I, rather than what I do?
Yeah, well, in actual fact, it's a trick question, to be honest. You know, because I've had people give me the most extraordinary answers, which are that sometimes catch me on the back foot. But the point about it is, it does actually reflect something about how they see not just themselves, but how they see the world. Sometimes, just that question.
I mean, do people actually, the question that you ask, do people actually think that to themselves ever? I don't. What do? I don't think.
No, that's the point. It is a trick question, because it's like, well, you know, I don't ever view myself as being anything in particular. You know, I'm a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, and I can be none of those things. You know, it depends on, because it's not really about that. But the idea is it's just a doorway, because how do you start?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. It's a great start. It is, and to put people on the spot like that is brilliant, because, as you say, then you know they've got to answer. They can't ignore you, and how they answer, as you say, it does say a lot about that person. I did think about. I mean, this is a confession. I did think about. I knew you were going to ask that, and I was going to throw the question back at you and say. I didn't, because it would have sounded rude, and you
could have done it.
I was going to ask you, what do you think, Vic, that I do? And that would have been, it wouldn't have answered your question, and it wouldn't have been much use really, but it would have been very enlightening to me.
Yeah.
Because as Burns, was it Robbie Burns who said it's the gift to give us to see how other people see it, or something like that. I don't know. But then, of course, for every person that you know, they're going to see you differently, I guess. You know, it's very hard to say, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, I'll sort of answer that. But as you know, we've often spoken, you know, you've mentioned a couple of stories, things that were important to you. I'll tell you a story that involves you, actually, which actually will answer your question. I was like you, you know, you work things out of records and all the rest of it because that was the only way you could do it, type of thing. So you ended up with a sort of a hodgepodge of things, didn't you? You ended up, I could play this, you know, I could play these solos by B.B. King and Freddie King. I've got this little bit of Hendrix I managed to work out of the record, and I've got some Frank Zappa riffs here, and God only knows what goes on in the rest of the song, you know, that type of thing. And then you start to fall into patterns of people's playing styles that you really like. You know, mine was people like Roy Buchanan and Jeff Beck and whatever, right?
Lovely.
So, and I got this sort of eclectic thing happening, and then I was playing classical guitar, so I had that. So at the time, this is before I was really, you know, being, you know, that it was before it was my job. Right? I was trying to just earn some money in such a way that gave me some time, and I ended up working for a company in Crayford, and I was living in Dartford. And it was all pretty boring. It's sort of shipping stuff around the world, which was actually not too bad, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. But we went for a Christmas. It was the Christmas company dinner. So I turned up with this thing, wore some outrageous clothes and all the rest of it, just to be obnoxious. There was a band playing.
Oh.
And you were on guitar. And and I don't know what the band was called or anything like that. And it was the first time I saw you play.
Really?
Right? Yeah. And you did Sultans of Swing.
Oh God, yeah, I've been cursed with that.
Yes, I know you have. And we'll come on to that story.
Yeah.
But I sat there and thought, shit, that's good.
Oh, bless you.
I thought, Jesus, I'll have to start practicing that.
No,
that is
I won't hear of it.
So anyway, when I started doing when there was a decent sort of music circuit in the Medway towns, right? We used to often cross paths one way or another because you'd be doing that. And I used to sit there thinking, come on, let's have a listen then and see what that bit is I can't work out off the record. And I would sit there and watch you play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was in a reggae band that was doing some crazy stuff. You know, I was in Bravura, and we were doing. It was reggae edged, but it was, you know, whatever rock stuff we could throw in the mix. But I found that interesting that you'd nailed that because it's a difficult number. So I sort of thought, this is somebody I've got to keep an eye on. So,
oh, bless. That's lovely of you to say that. That's just made me feel really nice. Thank you so much.
That's good. So tell me the story about how you got cursed by for Dire Straits. Go on, give us the story.
Well, I used to work with this band called Porridge. I don't know if you remember the Ned Porridge band.
Ned Porridge, that was
yeah. And how did that come about? No, I just think I played it before then. Oh, I don't know, but I suggested. Oh, I think I got talking to Clive, who was the other guitarist.
Clive, yeah,
Clive Lawrence.
Oh no, yeah, okay. I thought you meant somebody else. Yeah, okay.
Oh right, yeah, and we were talking about. I know, various things. He used to work for. Won't be able to remember his name now. The big promoter, the big music promoter. What's his name? No matter. But Harvey
Goldsmith.
No. Harvey Goldsmith. Yeah. And he used to get free records and stuff like that. And he didn't really want them. There was a band called Sniff and the Tears. He gave me which I ended up doing gigs with the drummer, Jamie from Sniff and the Tears.
Okay.
And he said, why don't we, he said, you like Dire Straits, don't you? I said, yeah. I said, Mark used to come and watch us, because he did. He used to come. And then I was in the Cafe Races, this band called the Cafe Races, which was Dave Pask and Dave Knopfler and all that lot, before Straits, evolved properly. And he said, why don't you, I said, I really like that Sultan to Swing. And he said, why don't you play it? I said, I can't, it's a country band. And he said, yes, you can. So I started to play it, and I improvised the solos and everything, and instead of learning them, because my brother, I don't know about you, but I know how your mind works. It's very, very organised. But with me, I'm no good at remembering telephone numbers, or I don't play any shadows numbers, never have, because I can't remember the orders that the order the notes go in. And they have to be in a, I'm fine with patterns and things like that. I can sit there and scales and improvise. But anyway, so I thought, no, come on, Geoff. So I sat in the garden. I thought, I'm going to have to learn what Mark Knopfler played properly. I'm going to have to do it. So I sort of learned what he did.
Yes, yeah.
And then one day something happened. I think the PA busted or something on stage. So I'd been doing a bit of classical stuff, teaching a bit of classical stuff. So I launched into this, I don't really think it's one of Bach's things that he knocked up.
Yes, as he did, yeah.
What he wrote.
With his 20 children, or whatever it was, God knows.
So I launched into that, and it went down so well. So everyone said, oh, you've got to do that everything. So I did. But the trouble is, everywhere I went after that, whatever band I was in, and they still say, "Oh, you do a great version of the Sultan Suite. Can you do that?" And I really don't want to do it. And of course, in my later years, I've had trouble with the hands and the arthritis and stuff like that. And it doesn't, that particular thing.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, it doesn't do the fingers any good, the joints any good. So the most extraordinary thing, I've always played slide and enjoyed it. So I don't know how I got to this, but I've now put heavy strings on a slide guitar, and I play just that, really. I play it like it's not, the tuning is different. So over the period of time, I've just probably relearned how to play. I found that playing in the traditional Spanish tuning with soft strings, the nines and everything, it's really uncomfortable. And my playing was suffering, and a mental thing as well. I just wasn't enjoying it. I just was not enjoying it playing.
It's very interesting, this, because it's funny you should say that. I had well, it turned out I ended up with a heart attack. This is what was the cause of this, right? Yeah, obviously I'm okay. I'm still here.
Yeah, I'm good.
But I was beginning to have problems with my hand, and I'd get this weird sort of cramping, and then people going, "Oh, that's carpal tunnel," all this sort of thing. I'm thinking, no, it doesn't feel like that. And what was going on was that obviously I wasn't getting enough blood flow when I was playing, and it would cramp. And I found that certain types of things were problematic. So I started then thinking, I might have to do a bit more slide. It's interesting that was my go-to thing, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Although I still don't really play an awful lot of slide. I love it, and obviously, but you've only got to listen to somebody like Derek Trucks, and you think, okay,
totally, yeah,
yeah. But it's interesting, that adaptability that we get. You get something, and again, like you're saying, when you're playing a song, like in the early days, it becomes almost like your trademark. And just imagine being Clapton, and you've got to do, you can reel them off, can't you?
Yes,
you've got to do Layla, you've got to do
Layla.
Badge, you've got to do Sunshine of Your Love, and it must be like, God, must be awful, mustn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it must be dreadful. People expect that from you, Oh God, no! Please don't make me play that again. You want to move on to new stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw Santana years and years ago at the Albert Hall. This is, not recently. This is a long time ago. But even by then, it was like, well, he's going to have to do Samba Party. He's going to have to do Black Magic Woman. He's going to have to, and so on. And he went out, and in the first half an hour, he bashed through a lot of the songs that you expected him to do. Just got them out of the way.
Yeah.
Right. And then he did a lot of stuff which was not what you expected. Yeah. And that near the end, he played Samba Party. That's how he did it. And because I was really fascinated by what he did, because Santana has always been a big influence on my playing. And I was, because then even at that point, I thought, well, that must be really awkward that you're going to have to turn up and play these numbers, unless you're a Paul Weller, and it's a bit like, I'm not playing them. I'm just going to do this stuff. And being sort of belligerent about it. But it must be very, very difficult. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I found with the slide guitar, because I just use that now. I mean, even if I'm not playing slide on it, I just play. I found also that I can actually, I mean, I think this was mentioned in the Commitments film, that I can get better corners on what I play. It's more not structured. It isn't that. It's less wishy-washy. I don't know what the terminology is. It's like architecture, really. I mean, I love Georgian architecture because there's straight lines.
Yeah.
It's like an honest building. I don't like the sort of chocolate boxy, beamy type of things, And the same with music. I just like it. There is so much. I mean, it's such a simple thing. The "You Really Got Me" riff. It's so simple, isn't it? It's ridiculously simple, but there's more emotion and magic in that for me than there is in any I don't know, these widdly diddly type.
I totally agree. Well, if you think about the great riffs, whether that's Smoke on the Water or Sunshine of Your Love or something, or a lot of the Zeppelin ones, there is actually something like you were talking about. There's like a syntax and a vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
There's a grammar.
There is,
the way that things go. And it's like a great orator. They don't have to say a lot of words.
No.
But there's a lot of things in the way that those words work. There's some sort of repetition in certain things that you don't expect, So if you look at a great riff, there'll often be the bit where it's on the beat, and then it syncopates and it goes back on the beat, type of thing. And it doesn't have to be fast. There's just something about the way the riff sits against the beat, And again, because my sort of gripe with sort of music education is that it's become, particularly higher up, you get a lot of technically good players that don't seem to know what it is from a feeling of emotion, why they're doing it. It just doesn't transmit somehow.
No, it is very, very odd. It's as you say, there are a lot of players that think that the more notes you can cram into one bar, the better player you are. And it leaves me cold, Vic. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying it's not sour. I mean, I can do all that. I mean, you can do all that. It's just a mad jumble of meaningless notes. It doesn't do anything to but something like All Day and All the Night, da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and then McAvoy comes in, it's just, and it makes the hair stand up on the back of your teeth. It's just something about it, isn't it? It's just, I don't know, but but all that stuff, that widdly diddly stuff, I can't bear it.
Yeah, that's interesting because again, when you look at Hendrix's thing, when Hendrix appeared on the scene, and I've said this a lot in the podcast, he wasn't the best guitarist. There was all sorts of jazz players and stuff out there that were just what they would do was sort of impossible, right? Hendrix appears on the scene, and it turns everything upside down.
Yeah.
He was doing something that just seemed impossible, but not from necessarily the playing. It was the performance. There was something magical going on.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's missed. You see people play and they're technically Right? You know, it could be a great drummer or whatever, but
Mm.
they're not John Bonham.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. There's something not there
Yeah.
in a lot of people's playing.
Yeah. I mean, I hesitate to use the term, but an X factor. There is its original meaning.
Yeah.
There is an X factor to that, isn't there?
It is. Yeah, there is. I interviewed Joe Sam, who's a bass player, really, really great bass player, and he was saying he called it the Uber musician. It's like these people who've got the technical chops, right? The Uber musician who's on, you know, TikTok or something. You know, you get a 10 seconds of somebody playing something, and you think, oh my God, you know. But what is anybody saying? You know, and I think that's the point. You know, what is it that these players are saying? You know, if you go back to like you're saying, like the Kinks, or, you know, all the 60s players,
yeah,
you know, the old rock and roll players, there was something they were communicating. Not that they knew what it was that they were communicating. I'm not even saying that.
No.
But there was something essential about what it was that they were doing.
Yeah, I think that's the essence of it. You know, it's not, oh, let's be clever with this. I mean, I think, bless him, Mark Knopfler, when he did the first album was great. And the second album was, right, we've done that. Let's see if we can better that. Let's see if we can do something. And it put it on a different shelf, really. It just, I don't know, it wasn't honest anymore. It wasn't, I remember Cafe Races, obviously I did stuff with them. The early Dire Straits, they were a little pub band.
Yes.
And it was honest. It was just honest. It was different. It was honest. He sounded like Hank Marvin on LSD, you know, and it's just, but it's just, then it became commercialized and let's see what else we can do and stuff like that. And I mean, I suppose who else wouldn't do that? Perhaps that was obviously the right thing to do. But for me, it didn't do it. I just lost interest in the band after that.
So what was your connection with those? Because that's quite interesting too.
Yeah, well,
how did they become Dire Straits, or elements of that become Dire Straits? Because obviously it was.
Yeah, well, it's quite a long. I don't know if do you know Pete Withers, the drummer? The first.
I don't know him personally.
No. Well, he worked with this band called, can't remember now, with Dave Pask, the singer, who's a good mate of mine, a great songwriter. Again, he's totally, Dave Pask is totally unknown, but one of my favourite songwriters. He's brilliant. There was Dave, there was another guy called Tony Siniglio, a bass player, and there was me, Dave Knopfler. It was sort of a melting pot of people, really. And it all sort of, Tony came to me, we were rehearsing in someone's house, the bass player, and he said, Geoff, have you got a gig for New Year's Eve for me? And I said, I haven't, Tony. I said, because the gig actually belongs, I've got a gig on New Year's Eve, but the gig belongs to the bass player. And I can't, obviously, it's his gig, you know. And I said, why? And he said, well, I'm doing this gig with this Cafe Racers, he said. And this Mark, he said, he is a nightmare. Because he can be, you know, Mark was a little bit, bless him, yeah, immense talent and everything, but I think he could be a bit difficult, you know. And they used to call him the teacher, used to call him Sir. You know, you get the Knopfler stare if anybody made a.
That was great.
Yeah, so I think what happened then was, Tony left the band. And he said, let's form a different band. That all broke up, the Cafe Racers. And then Dave Knopfler said he formed a band with John Ilsley. Yeah. He's incredibly tall. I've never seen anybody as tall as that bloke.
Yeah, he's enormously tall.
Absolutely. I mean, Mark was 6 foot, but he towered above me. He must be 6'6" or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's by the by. So they formed a band called Dire Straits, and I think Dave Pask was in on the early bit of it. And going back to my favourite subject, the Sultans of Swing, Mark had written this song, and it was dun 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 dun. It was like a real. And Dave Pask said, "I hate that. I hate it." He said, "Dirge, it's awful." He said, "You can't you can't play that thing. Anyway, he went his way, Dave went that way, and with me and stuff. And then suddenly there was this thing came out, the Dire Straits, and it was Dave Knopfler and Mark and John Ilsley and Pick Withers. Lee, I mentioned earlier, Lee Abbott, he played with Pick a lot. And he's a great drummer too. And so that started off. Then nobody knows why, but the two brothers fell out, as they often do, like the Davis brothers did, but not to this extent. And I mean, it's not for me to say, I don't know anything about it at all, but they don't speak to each other even now. And if one would visit the parents, then the other would have to know in advance so that he didn't. It's very, very sad, but I do know the reason, which I'm not prepared to say.
No, don't.
But I know what underlay that, and it's nothing to do with me. And I'm not. This is all. Sort of conjecture and whatever. But anyway, that's how that happened. And then the Cafe Racers were left to their own devices, and we did some tours. We did a tour in Norway. We followed Police around, the band Police, and in a transit van with summer tyres on, north of the rotten end of the Arctic Circle.
I bet that was fun.
Oh, we travelled all night and hadn't seen a house, and then the van went and stopped, and then we remembered that perhaps we had seen a house, so we were getting frostbite and stuff, and this beautiful lady put us up, and so many adventures which obviously we haven't got time to go into, but so we continued with that, and then I kept with Dave Pask, and he started recording with the E Street Band. I don't know if that was Springsteen's band, and I did some sessions there. I think it was Alaska Studio, I can't remember now. But the memory starts to fade. I'm going to have to write this book. You're going
to have to.
Yeah,
maybe this is we'll actually get you organised to do that, Geoff.
Yeah, I will do. And there's so many things that people have said to me in the past which I can't divulge. There was Keith Hartley, who I knew well, because I used to do the Pie Island a lot, and jam with all the guys over there, Art Wood and John Lord and stuff like that, which we haven't had time to mention. And he would tell me what the things that, because he used to work with Eric, as you know, with John Mayall, and the things that Eric would have said vis-a-vis American politics and his views on things. And so I thought, I'm not going to, I obviously can't tell anybody what that guy had said, and it's only hearsay, but what I'm going to do is write this book, and then on my death. Yeah,
exactly. Get it released.
Yes. Yeah. So I can't be blamed for anything.
Good idea, mate. Because there's lots of people sort of make comments of, I didn't say, or a couple of times I've had to take things out of the podcast. People have said things, and then they come back and said, I'm just wondering whether we should just take that out. But
yes. Yeah.
You haven't said anything problematic.
No. I've been quite guarded, I think, on that.
But so I think there's a few.
There's skeletons in all musicians' cupboards, and we learn these things. We've seen these things, but we don't repeat. We daren't repeat them, and we have our own skeletons, of course, which have to be locked quite.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but the whole thing. What an adventure, though. I mean, had we gone into plumbing or building or something, we may have made lots of money or whatever, but.
Well, we would have made more money than being a musician, that's for sure, but it wouldn't have been as exciting. And as you say, some of the stories that you can dine out on as a plumber, there probably aren't that many. Not unless you just sorted out the U-bend in, I don't know,
Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, or Mick Jagger's apartment somewhere.
Can you see the sun is in my eyes now?
It is.
It shines on the righteous, you see.
It is. It's certainly not shining on me. It's overcast here, so I think that probably sort of gives us a good moment to. Yeah.
I tell you what, it's been great though, Vic. Our paths don't cross enough, and we should keep in touch more.
Yeah, I know. We should do.
There's so many similarities between
Oh
us,
yeah, I know.
our
So,
histories and stuff like that.
I think particularly as we both came out of a particular point in time where you had to learn in a particular way and
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah, definitely. Well,
absolutely.
Geoff, that's been brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant. It's lovely talking to you.
And you, Vic, thanks so much for that opportunity. Because
That's right. And it's always good fun catching up with people and getting those stories. And what I didn't say at the time, Albert Lee does keep cropping up in these podcasts as the guitarist that everybody goes like, oh my God.
Yes, I know. But I would urge you to listen to that track of mine. It's called, oh my God, what's it called, Vic? Why Can't We Stop? It's called.
Okay.
It does a great big solo at the end. And I love it. And
okay, so what I would suggest is, because obviously I want things on the show notes and stuff like that, so that people can find you and find out what reference your stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we can get that on the show notes, that'd be really cool. All right, mate.
Brilliant. Lovely to speak to you, Vic.
Yes, great to speak to you, and we'll catch up in the real world.
Yes. Bye now.
See you.